Ukraine accepting a U.S. proposal for a 30-day ceasefire, and President Trump's envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, is in Qatar to join indirect talks between Israel and Hamas to extend the ceasefire in Gaza. Joining me now to assess these latest developments is retired U.S. Navy Captain Armin Kurdian. Armin, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Right off the top here, we're going to play a soundbite. Here's Secretary of State Marco Rubio.
Today, we made an offer that the Ukrainians have accepted, which is to enter into a ceasefire and into immediate negotiations to end this conflict in a way that's enduring and sustainable and accounts for their interests, their security, their ability to prosper as a nation.
Now, right now, I want to get your thoughts. The U.S. Does appear to be resuming intelligence sharing with Ukraine. Was this a big motivating factor for them to come to the table on these peace talks? And what do you make of the U.S. strategy to incentivize this?
Well, I guess it depends on chicken or the egg, which actually came first. Trump inherited a situation. Everything that happened before the 20th of January was a sunk cost, so he had to deal with the situation as it was. The U.S., in my opinion, never really got fully behind the Ukrainians the way they could have, at least from the very beginning. So the Ukrainians are in a situation now, not of their own doing. That intelligence sharing is of exceptional value. And that's the best way to make a smaller fighting force a lot more effective. Now, in terms of saying, we'll put this back on the table if you sign the deal, that's entirely possible. You could say that he kind of bullied his way into it. He got what he wanted. And in the end, I think that's what was necessary. I don't know that we necessarily got to it the right way. But the question really is going to be now, is the other side going to take advantage of the situation and perhaps rightly or wrongly perceive American weakness or American wavering in terms of prosecuting the war?
I want to play some sound of President Trump earlier today weighing in.
Go to Russia and hopefully President Putin will agree to that also, and we can get this show on the road. We can get this horrible war where 2,000-3,000 soldiers a week, every week, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 sometimes. We're going to meet with them later on today and tomorrow, and hopefully we'll be able to wipe out a deal. But I think the ceasefire is very important. If we can get Russia to do it, that'll be great.
So there you have the president saying hopefully President Putin will agree to it. Do you think Russia will ultimately agree to this deal? And what might be the motivating factor for them?
Well, what's very interesting, and kind of going back to this minerals deal that we have with Ukraine, which is really a stroke of genius on the part of the president in terms of beryllium, zirconium, palladium, iron, cobalt, all these types of wealthy metals that Ukraine can use. But what's very interesting is that a lot of the areas that Russia has occupied also have a lot of these minerals. There's a couple of very heavy lithium deposits that Russia's occupied. So now the question is Russia going to give them up? Are they going to say, well, we'll stop fighting, but we're keeping what we have? And if they do they start pulling the stuff out of the ground and trying to enrich themselves, basically stealing a lot of Ukraine's wealth? I very much doubt the United States, and we shouldn't, by any stretch of the imagination, accept a redrawing of the borders. At worst, occupied territory. If we accept a redrawing of the borders, that could be really bad. So Russia perceives themselves in a position of strength right now. So now whether or not they accept this deal or they continue to prosecute this war, you saw they started moving in when we stopped the intelligence. How much longer are they going to keep fighting, and how much more progress do they want to make before they say, okay, maybe we'll sit down and talk?
To your point, this deal is just for 30 days. So, could it grow into a longer agreement and ultimately end the war? And in this 30-day period, what are both sides going to be asking for and looking for?
Well, if you go back through history, whenever you have a ceasefire that's an extended period of time, 30 days or longer, it's generally much harder to get the fighting restarted unless someone is blatantly cheating or there's some kind of skirmish or attack and then he's used an excuse to start things up again. Ukraine obviously wants a security guarantee. They may ask for a little bit more access to the Black Sea ports, while the Russian Navy was devastated by Ukrainians in the Black Sea. The Russians are going to look for probably Zelensky not to be in power and perhaps a firm signed commitment that Ukraine will not seek NATO membership. But again, we go back to chicken and the egg. People are saying, this war happened because Ukraine threatened to join NATO. Well, Ukraine threatened to join NATO because Russia was there threatening Ukraine. So that is going to be very hard to get past, and it's going to require not just the United States working, but the European nations. And frankly, I think you're also going to need China to get involved because China has been backing a lot of what Russia has done. So the U.S. is going to need China if we really want to bring this war to an end on any kind of terms that is even moderately favorable to Ukraine.
Now, moving to the Middle East, President Trump's personal friend and special envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, says Hamas has no alternative other than to leave Gaza. I want to play some sound for you.
There's no logical or rational choice for them other than to leave. If they leave, then I think all things are on the table for a negotiated peace deal.
Now, if, in your assessment, will Hamas leave? And if so, what's next for the Israelis and Palestinians?
I very seriously doubt Hamas is going to leave Gaza. At best, they may do some moderate level of disarming. But Iran has their proxy there, has Hamas as their proxy. And they keep using the Palestinians as a red herring. Hamas is there supposedly to help the Palestinians. Well, Hamas is there really to go after Israel and basically help Iran. So is Hamas going to leave Gaza? You would have to get the entire Arab League, every single Arab country, to say Hamas has to leave Gaza for there to even be a chance for that to actually happen. We don't want to go through this again. We don't want to see the Palestinians brutalized like this again. We want to see a Gaza that's rebuilt with free markets, free elections, and without this Hamas terror state, which is basically responsible for what has happened to those people.
To your point about Iran, lastly, President Trump, there's certain times when he talks about other authoritarian threats, whether it's North Korea, China, or Iran, where that he's not kidding. And he just recently, I believe it was yesterday, implied that things could get very interesting with Iran when it comes to their nuclear arsenal that they don't have yet, but developing as such. Where do you think that stands right now, and where are things going with Iran?
With regards to the nuclear program, it is my humble opinion that if that program were to ever have to be taken out militarily, it needs to be done by the United States, preferably without Israeli help. We need to basically shield them from any particular kinds of consequences. And frankly, the U.S. is the only country with anywhere close to the conventional capability that's required to take that capability out, which would be very, very hard to do. Iran needs to be strangled in terms of money funding of all of its proxies, the dozen proxies it has in the Middle East. Only by stopping them and putting those sanctions back in place that Trump did during his previous administration, which basically almost brought Hamas and Hezbollah to the ground, and now they were back up under the Biden administration. That is how you stop a conflict from happening before it starts.
Retired U.S. Navy Captain Armin Kurdian, thank you so much.
Thanks, Steve.